All right, so now principle number 4, interface segregation principle. All right, so the best way to illustrate this one is that, let's take a look at these two examples. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have done assembly your own computer and desktop computer. It's a lot of fun, and you bought all the pieces and eventually plugging all the cables. And it looks like a very complicated motherboard, or here in the back, you've got a lot of cable to install. But if you have done this, you actually find that it's actually not that difficult. Part of the reason is because for every single thing you are trying to plug in, you will have all different kind of ports or different kind of interfaces. In many cases, if you're putting the wrong thing to the wrong port, and then it won't fit, right? So that's kind of good, because if you can fit something perfect, that probably means that you're getting things right. That's why this part is not really too difficult. However, if you go to here, and then if we give you one item, and then I want you to find the right place to put, and it's really difficult just because there's so many different possibilities, and it's such a big search space, and then you don't know where it should go, right? Compared with this one not only is limited, but also there are different type. Clearly, there are different type of ports you can use. Right. Obviously, this one will make the whole usage experience much easier, and then this one is very difficult to make it work. So that's what this principle is trying to tell us. Let's take a look at a very concrete and practical example. This interface is about generating some report, and as you can see, there are 5 different methods. We can generate a report for per file. We can generate a report for SIC, and something about enterprise. We don't know what that is, but it's kind of a report. We can generate a resource performance report. We can generate a project schedule report. We can also generate a profit report. And different report will be used in different part of the system. For example, in the employee UI, you will need to generate the ESIC report and the per file report. But if the manager log into his or her UI, then you can do not only the per file ESIC, but also be able to generate a resource performance report and then project schedule report. And finally, if you're the admin, then you can basically do anything you want. So obviously, there's 3 different kind of roles that have the permission or access to different level of report. Okay. However, if you build a system like this, there is a major problem. Right? So even though that in different UIs you can have the same interface and then access different methods, but there's really no control. For example, inside this manager UI, okay, so you got this object here that instantiates the object report BL, and then think about if you're doing this one in Eclipse, and you type object BL dot, and immediately you will see a list of all the available methods you can call and use. And that's really the problem, because now, okay, so you can call the method you might want to use, per file report, performance report, but you can also see the profit report. And the profit report is really just for the admin to see, and then you're not supposed to do that one here in the manager UI. But you really don't have any control, because it's available, and then when you see all the options, you do have that one as an option. Right. So that is not good, and that means your interface is not really well designed, because you give these extra options that the caller or client do not really need. Not only it's a safety concern, but also it makes them to when they use this interface, it's very difficult, because they got to figure out which one is the right one to call, and that's why it's not really necessary. So let's take a look at the principle, and then the principle says this. So clients should not be forced to depend on interfaces that they do not use. All right, so we define a lot of interface. I told you interface is a very good thing. But whenever you define it, make sure, again, the client will need it. All right, and if the client doesn't need some of this method, you might need to change the interface, or maybe modify the interface. And then you should always keep the interface concise and small. And let's take a look at the same example. A better way that follows interface segregation principle is this. So I have one interface called employee report, and that one only has 2 methods. And now I define another interface for manager. And manager actually is a sub-interface, subtype of this one. So it inherits this parent interface. So that means this interface has not only these 2 methods, but also the other 2. And in the same way, the admin report interface will have one more, but this one extends the manager, so it will also have access to this message and also this message. So basically, we're designing an interface hierarchy that split all these functionalities, right, so they have the right access to each role. And now when you build a system, it's much better because now in the employee UI, and all you need to do is to say, okay, I'm going to use this interface to define my class, and then I'm going to create this object. At this point, because you define the object type like this, which follows employee report type, and then you will only have access to this method. And in the manager UI, then you can change the declaration. I can define that as a manager report. In that case, you only have access to these 4 of them. And finally, in the admin UI, then you will use that third interface, which includes all the methods. So if you define and declare your object in that type, you can have the access to all different types. All right. So just by making this simple change, you can see that it will allow you to better manage the security, but more importantly, when developers are writing this kind of code, they don't have any confusion. They know that there are all the things they can do. They will not make any calls by mistake that they're not supposed to call. So that is kind of what this principle tells us, and it's a very practical principle. Definitely start to re-examine your interface defined to see if there's anything you can improve.